Okay, so for our roasted butternut squash pie, we are first going to be splitting this butternut squash in half, then roasting it until it gets nice and soft. That way we can incorporate it. Alright, this is our freshly split butternut squash. We're going to scrape out all of these seeds and pulp, and then we're going to get them on the baking tray and roast it. Okay, so that's our butternut squash all scraped out and ready to go. Got it on a foil-lined baking sheet. We're going to bake it at 400 degrees for about an hour or until it's tender. For this next part, we're going to be making sweetened condensed milk, which will form part of the filling for the pie. So what we're going to be using for this is milk, heavy cream, some sugar, a little bit of salt, and I'm going to be adding a cinnamon stick for some flavoring. The reason I'm doing this all on a scale is as it cooks, you measure the weight as it's cooking down to see how much is evaporating off, and that tells you when it's going to be done. So let's jump into it. Okay, so first off we need 32 ounces of milk. I'm using whole milk here, but you can use really whatever you want. I'm not sure if like milk alternatives can be used. A lot of it comes down to a sugar situation, so. Alright, that's about on the nose. Next up, 6 ounces of heavy cream. So we're looking to get up to 38. Alright, a little bit overshoot, but I'm not too worried about that. Okay, now I've got a 1/8 of a teaspoon of table salt here. That's going in. And I am going to toss in 1 cinnamon stick. Okay, now for the last bit is the sugar, which is the sweetened part. So we need 7 ounces. So we're looking at 45 is our goal. It's about a cup of sugar. You can use white. The recipe calls for toasted sugar, which, if anyone doesn't know, it's basically just lightly browned white sugar. Has a bit more of a caramel note, less sweetness. But I don't have that on hand, so you do with what you have. Alright. It's funny, the beginning of this took forever, and now getting up to the 45 or beginning went super fast, and getting up to 45 is taking forever. There we go. Okay. Alright. Now we got this over medium heat, and we're going to bring this up to a simmer and cook it for about 12 minutes. After that, we're going to lower the heat, and we'll keep doing it for about 30, stirring every now and then. But the beginning is kind of when we want to be careful, since we're ramping up the temperature pretty quick. Alright friends, so we are approaching a simmer now. So I'm going to reduce the heat slightly, then we're going to cook for about 30 minutes more, and we're going to scrape the sides and the bottom continuously just to make sure stuff isn't sticking and burning. It's been about 20 minutes now. I took some measurements earlier and we lost about 3 ounces, so I'd say we're probably down another 2 by now. I'm going to keep this going for probably another 10 minutes. As you can see, it's boiling pretty well, but it's not sticking or burning. I'm stirring it every couple of minutes just to make sure, kind of running around the side to make sure there's no milk solids that are going to burn on the edges or scrape along the bottom to make sure there's nothing down there. We're just going to let it keep going. It's pretty happy right now. So our butternut squash is done. So what now we're going to do is we're going to let it cool down, and then we're going to remove the flesh from the skin, and then we're going to blend it to get it nice and smooth and turn that into a puree. Say we've been cooking for probably about a total of an hour, but a lot of that was time away from the stove where I turned down the heat. So I just weighed it, and we are currently at 27 ounces. Now we want to get to a total volume of 19 ounces, not including our cinnamon stick, of course. So we've got 8 ounces left, probably another 20 minutes or so, but I don't know if you can see it on camera, but the color has started to change to this very light tan, which is really cool, and it smells amazing, just cinnamon and sugar. Cannot wait to see how this tastes later. Here we are, we took another measurement, we're now at 22 ounces, so we're almost there. It's definitely turned very light tan color. It's definitely looking like condensed milk now, so I'm impressed. I've managed to take a few tastes without burning my fingers off completely, and it tastes really, really good, I have got to say. This is probably a recipe I'm going to try and use in the future. I imagine it'd probably be pretty good if you can incorporate it into ice cream, and I'm sure there are definitely other uses out there. Okay, folks, so now we are at 19 ounces, pretty much on the nose. There's like 19.1 ounces. So I'm gonna put it in a mason jar to store it for later, and I'm gonna remove that cinnamon stick so it doesn't sit in there for too long. Okay, everybody, so here we are. I've got to say this stuff tastes absolutely incredible. Way better than anything store-bought, especially with that implementation of cinnamon in there. Definitely something that's worth making and just keeping in the fridge. I can imagine that if you just put a drizzle in your coffee, it would take it to the next level, or in your tea. Alright, so this is gonna cool down. I'm gonna stick it in the fridge. So now flipped over, this is what they look, all cooled down. Super, super soft. So what we're gonna do is gonna take a spoon and just separate it out from the skin, and then we're just gonna mash it up. We don't even need a food processor for this. This is all that pulp now separated from the skin, scraped into the bowl. I left about half of those super brown bits out. That way it won't give it too roasty of a flavor. So we'll see how this goes. We're gonna mix this for a little bit and see what it turns into. It's all mashed up now. So this is now ready to be chilled and then implemented in a pie. Can't wait to see how that turns out. This should be amazing between this and that condensed milk. Okay, everybody, so now to make our crust, we're gonna start off. I've got 8 ounces of all-purpose flour. Into it, I've added a ½ ounce of sugar and 4 grams of salt. So it's gonna be added right on in there. Now we're gonna take 2 sticks of butter straight from the fridge, chop it up into blocks, about 3/4, ½ inch in size. Toss it all in there. All right, here's where the 3-year-old and you can now play. So you're gonna go in, toss all those cubes, get them coated up with flour. You're gonna grab one and squish it. This is gonna be a process. Okay, so our butter is all smashed flat. As you can see, we've tossed it again with flour to coat it. And we're gonna add 4 ounces of cold water. We're gonna mix that in. Once your dough is mostly together, dump it out on a floured counter. And this is where you get to work. You're gonna knead it a little bit by hand, and then you're gonna start rolling it once it's homogeneous. Okay, now we can start. Alright, so now that you've got a roughly 10 by 15 rectangle, applying flour as needed, you're going to fold in these sides, kind of like an envelope. Use a bench scraper if you need to help it along. Okay, so need a bit more flour under there. Fold all that up, and then you're going to fold the bottoms and tops down, kind of like an envelope. This is going to help you create some flaky layers. And you go out, roll it again. Okay, so we've rolled it out. We're going to repeat that folding process, at which point we're going to divide the dough in half, since this makes enough for either a double batch or for 2 single pies. Okay, so now we're just working with half of it. We're going to take that, reflour everything, and now we're going to roll it out really as thin as we can get it to make our actual pie crust. Alright, so we've got it definitely of ample size, so going under it with a bench scraper, try and get it loosened up. Then we're going to drape it over that rolling pin and transfer it to our pie dish. So we're back now after patching up the pie and prettying it up a little bit. This is now going to go in the fridge for 2 hours. At this point, I can congratulate you, because if it's like, for you guys, my first time making a pie, then we have been successful after about 15 minutes of work. Nice and easy. Alright, so we let it bake for probably about 100 minutes, 110 minutes, so roughly about 2 hours. And as you can see, it kind of baked a little bit too long. It's still going to be really good, it's just you can see how it pulled in along these edges. That's not intentional. So if I were to do this again, I would recommend letting it overhang slightly, so if it does pull in, it's easy to just trim off what's left. We trimmed off the excess edges, and now we rolled them out once more. I'm going to use them to patch in those edges, the holes and gaps that are appearing. Here is the pie. We were getting ready to blind bake it, so I covered it with foil and filled it with beans to make sure it doesn't poof up. We're going to bake it at 350 for about 90 minutes until it's fully baked, essentially. Now to assemble our pumpkin filling, we have, ironically, our roasted butternut squash puree, homemade condensed milk with some vanilla extract, melted butter, 3 eggs, and we have a mixture of brown sugar, salt, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. So we're now just going to mix everything together, and then we're going to add it to our pie crust and bake. And see that condensed milk, it got like a nice caramel note from the long cooking. It's not that standard pure white stuff you get from the store. The stuff tastes amazing just by itself. I can imagine how good it would be just drizzled in coffee. Alright, now we're just going to stir this, get it all nice and homogeneous. Make sure everything is getting all cozy in there together. Okay, now that they're starting to become friends, we're going to keep going a little bit longer just to make sure that everyone just knows everybody's secrets, and then we're going to add it to our pie. Alright, given the state of our pie crust and how it pulled back, we may not be able to fit all of this in here, but we're going to do what we can here. It's going to ladle in absolutely as much as I can. Anything left over, I'm going to probably just toss in the sous vide and cook it like a custard. Because I imagine if it's making a pumpkin pie filling, it should taste amazing even by itself without a crust. Alright, and into the bowels of hell it goes! Alright, so after about 35 minutes, it took 35 minutes just because I had all of the evaporated milk and the puree in the fridge, so I added a few minutes of baking time. So it's now out of the oven, and I'm going to leave it on a cooling rack for a few hours to cool off, and I'll leave it out overnight covered with plastic wrap.